Hello everybody and welcome to this quick video. I just wanted to share with you all something that I came across, and it is very interesting. Obviously there's a scientific explanation for it, and there's a few spiritual stories that go along with it as well. It's about the rock formation which resembles a snake. Obviously I'm going to put the picture in the video, and it's at the Naga cave, and it's located in Pulanga National Park in Thailand. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but this looks like a giant snake, okay? Like, even the colouring in the stones, even though there's no colour, but you can see the difference between like the shading between, like, to show the different lines of a snake's skin. Like, it's fascinating. Like, if this was natural rock, as they say, and it's just formed over time due to heat and moisture, then why is it shaped the way that it's shaped? Also, it's just really interesting. So the cave is home to many mysterious myths and legends, and it is a hot spot for tourists every single year. Many of the legends come from the rock's appearance, which takes the form of a snake. Okay, Buddhism plays a large role in many of the legends that appear around the cave, as serpent beings are considered to be guardians of the water who live in damp caves. Every year, new parts of the cave that resemble snakes are discovered, which fuel more stories to be told. Right, so they're still discovering new parts of this cave. And the Naga cave, or Naga cave, is located in, as I said, Pulanga National Park, which is in the Buang Kong Lung district of Buang Kan province in Thailand. Naga means snake in the Thai language, and the cave took its name from the texture of some of the stones in the area, which resembled the scaled skin of a snake. Okay, and it goes on to say, in recent months, videos and images have appeared which were taken from the surrounding area. One is supposedly a picture of the head of a mummified giant snake. Right, this is what I'm going to put in the picture. But this isn't actually from the same place as this cave. Okay, so that's a bit of fake news out there. The giant snake head is real, but it's at a different place. Okay, so people are trying to say that there's the head of the snake and there's the snake's body, when actually they're in two different places. So they are both real things, but they're just not a part of the same thing, if you know what I mean. So also in Buddhist law, Nagas are half human, half serpent beings that live in the netherworld and occasionally take human form. They are considered to be guardians of the water and often live in damp caves by the water's edge. Now, I know somebody that has done a lot of work on these Nagas, and to be honest, whenever I think of snakes, I think of energy. Right, that's just what I think of. And I know in India, I think it's in Hindu. Yeah, I think it's in Hindu. Don't quote me on this because I'm going from memory now. There's a guy on YouTube, Praveen, I think his name is. Amazing. He's absolutely amazing. He's boots on the ground, goes out to all these temples in South India, North India, and there's so much documentation on these temples to show. I think there was one main one in particular. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link his channel. I'll link the video where he explains the Nagas, and apparently that was the same thing. There was a cave of snakes, but there was half human form, and it is fascinating. So again, this is another part of the world where they're talking about the Naga people. So it's really interesting how it all ties in, and this is what struck me with this, because I'm like, wow, okay, I only know this from one other person, which is Praveen. So I wonder if he knows about this as well. And according to a popular legend, the Mekong River is in northeastern Thailand, and Laos was said to be created by two Naga kings slithering through the area. Okay, Laos is where the giant head is. Okay, so there's a river created by two Naga kings, so that's the serpent, half human, slithering through the area, thus creating the Mekong and the nearby Nan River. Today, this area is part of the Langka National Park. And this national park includes layers of 3 mountains spread along the Mekong River, a popular tourist trail that leads to the top of the Pangai, a favourite lookout point which gives stunning views of the Ban Payong district and the Mekong River. Okay, and the Naga cave is actually 2 kilometres underneath that lookout point. Visitors to the site, including locals, rarely ventured below the hill, and so the cave was a hidden gem and only ever visited by a handful of people. So even if the locals didn't go there, now I'd take notice of that, because obviously our ancient ancestors, they knew the real power of the place, or they knew what the real story of what happened. And that leads me on to say, I found this beautiful ancient story. Obviously they say it's mythological, but I'm going to share it anyway. It's really, really beautiful. Okay, this is the story of a Naga giant snake. It all happened long, long ago in the mystical kingdom of Rapata Nakhon on the shores of the Kong Lung Lake. Right, let's go. Prince Fahong was tall, strong and handsome. Every man in the kingdom was proud to call him friend, and the girls all loved his dazzling smile and the twinkle in his deep blue eyes. But like most princes in these stories, Fahong was lonely. He had all the riches in the world, everything money could buy, but he couldn't find his true love. What good were riches when he had no one to share them with? One day, as the prince was walking aimlessly through the woods along the shores of the Kong Lung Lake, he heard a girl singing way off in the distance. He'd never heard the song before, but her voice was so sweet, and the words were so sad and melancholy, that he instantly fell in love with her. He ran in the direction of the voice and looked high and low, but the singing had stopped and the girl was nowhere to be seen. He was about to turn around and go back home when he heard the sound of a girl softly crying. He knew, deep in his heart, that it had to be the same girl who was singing so beautifully just moments before. Suddenly, he saw a flash of a red and green cape just behind a giant tree and ran towards it. Once more, the girl was gone, but at his feet, he saw that a snake had shed its skin. He picked the skin up and turned it around in his hands. He'd seen snakeskin before, but never with this strange pattern, for one half was coloured a brilliant red, while the other half was a green as the leaves on the giant tree. The prince looked again at the snakeskin in his hand. What could it mean? Confused, he walked back to the palace. He would ask his grandfather, King Yu Lu, about the strange girl that he's only half seen, and about her beautiful singing voice. He was a wise man. Some say he was the wisest man that had ever lived. Surely he would know. Meanwhile, on the other side of the great Kong Lung Lake, a beautiful girl sat crying. Her name was Nakarintarani, and she was crying because she was so sad about her life. It was so unfair. She had just been walking in the woods and had seen the most handsome man with such a dazzling smile and the deepest of deep blue eyes. She was totally in love with him, but she was sad because she knew they could never be together. Because Nakarintarani had a secret, she was a Nagi, a serpent that could take human form. Her people, her family, came from the enchanted underworld of the Patala Loka, a place filled with gold and silver and rubies that were bigger than a man's hand. Her father was lord of the Naga, and the gods had tasked him with looking after all these riches, left behind by the souls of men who had died too early in battle. Over many centuries, the Naga people had built a splendid city above the ground, and they lived in palaces and houses just like humans. But they all knew the law. A Naga must never marry a human, or the gods would grow angry and take away all the gold and jewellery. Without these riches, the city would become quickly poor, and the Naga people would starve and fade away into nothingness. But Nakarintarani had a plan. She would go to the woods and find this boy again. She would reveal her secret and tell him she was in love with him. If he felt the same about her, then they would run away to a distant kingdom where nobody knew who she was, where nobody could care that she was a Nagi. Yes, she thought to herself, this is a good plan. She rushed back to her room to pack up her possessions, a look of determination on her beautiful face. Naga was so excited. Her plan had worked out better than she could ever dreamed. She'd gone back to the forest, and after just a short wait, she met the boy again. He was even more handsome than she remembered, and he wasn't just an ordinary man. No, he was a prince. Of course, she was scared of telling him about her secret, that she was a Naga, but he told her that his love was steadfast and true, and he couldn't help but be in love with her for the rest of his life. After telling her this, they had shared their first kiss. Whilst they kissed, a tiger had crept up behind them, and it had suddenly leapt up at her. Its teeth just inches from her throat. In a heartbeat, Prince Fahung had unleashed his sword and struck it at the tiger's foot. The tiger had run off into the woods, howling in pain. Naga had asked the prince, "Why did you not slay the beast, but only injure its leg?" He replied that he couldn't bear to harm another living creature, no matter how dangerous it might appear. Once she'd heard this, she knew that her instincts had been right. He was a good man. The very next moment, Prince Fahung had taken her by the hand, gazed at her with his deep big blue eyes, and asked if she would be his wife. She threw her arms around him and kissed him again. She was so overcome with joy that she'd almost forgotten to say yes. A few days later, Prince Fahung was pacing nervously outside the doors to his grandfather's private room. In the heart of the royal palace at Rapatat Nakan yesterday, he had told the old king that he'd met the love of his life and proposed marriage, but that she was the daughter of the Lord of Naga, and that she was a Nagi. King Yulu had dispatched a rider to the Naga kingdom to request that Lord Naga travel to the royal palace for a very important matter. Right now, they were both inside the room, discussing his future behind closed doors. Just when he thought he couldn't bear it no longer, he heard his name called by one of the guards. "Prince Fahung, the King Yulu requests your presence. You may enter." With that, the doors were flung open, and Fahung entered the room, his heart beating so hard he thought he must surely die. Inside the room, his grandfather and the Naga Lord were sitting at a table, sharing a glass of chayenne, spiced with herbs from the royal palace gardens. "Well, Fahung, my boy," his grandfather started, "the Lord Naga and I have had a long discussion. He and I are agreed. You and your darling Naga have our blessing to marry, but with one condition. You may live here at the palace, but should anyone ever discover her terrible secret, I will be forced to disown you and banish the two of you from my kingdom." Fahung was overjoyed to hear this and hugged his old grandfather so hard it seemed his ribs might shatter. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you," he exclaimed, laughing and twirling his grandfather round and round in the air. "You've no idea how happy I am. You've really no idea." And with that, he kissed the old man on both cheeks and made for the door. But before he could step outside, Lord Naga called after him, "Prince Fahung, do not be in such a hurry. I have something that I must say." Fahung walked towards the Lord, aware for the first time how frightening he looked. "Hear me now," Lord Naga said, a threatening finger pointing towards the prince. "I was not in favour of this marriage. Our laws forbid a Naga to marry a human, especially when that human is my one and only beloved daughter. But she is young and she is in love, and she knows I will not stand in the way of her happiness. But should anyone ever find out who she really is, what she really is, then I have vowed to seek a terrible retribution on your grandfather's kingdom. Now go be married, but disregard my words at your peril." Fahung's smile left his lips in an instant, and with a suitable defence, he turned and left the room. Worrisome thoughts filling his troubled head, he would let the Naga Lord's words trouble him for long. He was marrying the most beautiful girl in the world, and he had the blessing of both his grandfather and the Lord Naga. Surely nothing could destroy his happiness. The wedding was a splendid affair. and by royal decree the celebrations lasted for 7 days. Workers had toiled day and night to build a bridge over the Konglung Lake, and the people of Ratapa Nakhon and Naharat travelled between the two cities, singing, dancing and filling their bellies with exotic food sent from kingdoms across the world. Everybody was happy for the married couple. Well, almost everybody. A girl called Kulan, one of the chambermaids who had worked at the royal palace, was very upset. She'd secretly been in love with Prince Fahong for many years, but there was little chance that she could ever win his heart. He was a prince and she was just a lowly servant. But she had kept on hoping that maybe, somehow, someday, but now all hope was gone. She was upset and angry, and most of all, she hated Fahong's new wife. 3 years passed and all was not well. Naga had not produced a royal baby, and the people of Ratapa Nakhon grew displeased with her. They had no idea that she was a Naga, for her secret had been well kept, and so they didn't understand that she could never have a child. The ladies who worked at the palace called her Kwampen Haman, which means barren or sterile, and they laughed at her every time she passed. Poor Naga became pale and withdrawn, and spent most of her days in her bedroom, refusing to eat. She became so sick that she started to lose her ability to remain in human form, and would often turn back to a snake when she knew she was alone. One morning, Kulan, the chambermaid, was sent to collect food from Naga bedroom, which remained uneaten from the night before. Kulan disliked this duty, for she still hated the prince's wife with a passion. Kulan knocked on the door, and hearing no answer, she stepped into the bedroom, but she did not see Naga in the bed. She saw a giant snake. Kulan screamed and tried to run, but then she heard a strange voice coming from the bed, a horrible hissing sound. "Please don't be scared, Kulan. It's me, Naga, your princess." No, thought Kulan, it couldn't be, for Hong's wife was a snake. She had to tell the prince. He would have to annul the marriage, and he would be free to marry someone else. Perhaps that someone would be her, Kulan. She ran out screaming, "Where's the prince? His wife is a snake. Where's the prince? His wife is a snake." She ran through all the rooms of the royal palace, and soon everybody had heard her. They all started to repeat her words. "His wife is a snake. Naga is a snake," until at last the news reached the ear of the king. But not only the king, because today was the king's birthday, and he had invited Lord Naga to his birthday celebrations. The Lord Naga was furious. He jumped to his feet and pointed a shaking finger at the king. "I told you," he screamed. "I warned you what would happen. I should never have allowed the blasted wedding," and with that he stormed out of the palace. Later that night, the Lord returned along with all the soldiers of the Naga kingdom. They arrived in all their fearsome splendour, all 20 foot high and bearing their venomous fangs, for they were all Naga, all of them serpents. The people of Ratapa Nakhon never stood a chance, and watched in horror as their homes were burnt and their palace came crashing down. Many of the people ran towards the bridge, hoping to escape the horror all around them. But as soon as they were halfway across, the Naga Lord ordered his soldiers to burn down the bridge, and the poor Ratapians fell to their death in the swirling waters. Within the space of a few hours, Ratapa was no more. The city was burned to the ground, the people were either dead or had fled for their lives, and the royal palace had been reduced to a pile of rubble. King Yulu took one last around the kingdom that he had once loved so much, and walked slowly and solemnly towards Lake Konglong. He raised his hot eyes to the heavens and shouted, so that all the gods could hear him, "As Buddha is my witness, I vow never to set foot on dry land until my beautiful kingdom is restored." And with that, he took one step forward and sank under the dark waters of the lake. Long, long ago, in the mystical kingdom of Rapata Nakhon, on the shores of the Konglung Lake, the great King Yulu disappeared without a trace. Did he drown on that terrible night? Or was he cursed by the enchanted gods of Pataka Loka, forever fated to live under the waters of the lake, and until the day when his kingdom rises from the ashes of its terrible destruction? And what of Prince Fahong and his wife Naga? Some say that they found a way across the lake that night and went to hide in a small cave, eventually dying of grief and hunger, but holding hands until the end, as much in love as the day they first met. And the locals, those that survived that terrible night, gave a name to that cave. They call it Naga. So that is such a beautiful story, and I just wanted to share it because that would make sense of where the snake come from, okay, in the first place. But the only thing is, where's the others? Oh yeah, like I say, they went down to the depths of the lake. So it's interesting. I suppose we need to dive deep down into these lakes, don't we, and see what's down there. But I think that's a really beautiful story. And again, it's the age-old story between love and destiny, and, you know, standing up for love, isn't it? Again, but it's always the same. And a lot of fairy tales have took the same principles from all of these stories. But these stories are thousands and thousands of years old. You know, it could even be millions of years old, because as you say, like, I think they're lying about the timeline. I don't believe. I think all of this stuff, they say millions of years ago, but I think it was a lot closer. But in their time, I think we have been alive on this planet. Not alive, but people have been here on this planet for millions and millions of years, and these stories could just be as old as that. And also, they was 20 foot high, you know. So again, more giant speakings. But I'm going to put some pictures with this as well, because it is quite beautiful. And the giant snake rock, the snakehead rock, that was only found on the 9th of June. I don't know, I think it was last year. Let me just check this. Let me just get a date. I think it was last year. But, you know, yeah, it was last year. This article's from this year, so it was 9th of June last year. So, you know, what's to say what else they're going to uncover there? They could find another one, or, you know, evidence of a whole civilization. You know, and it was found a few steps away from the base of the mountain as well. And, you know, to a lot of people it confirms the ancient legends, but, you know, to others, I suppose the truth is that they don't really know. But I know that what I believe, and I didn't even know about any of these legends, like the local legends and stuff like that. And this story that I've just told you as well has got its roots in very, very ancient Buddhist mythology. You know, because there was many early civilizations believed that snakes were creatures sent by the gods as guardians to spiritual gateways. And they saw the snake as a symbol of power and strength. See, I see it as energy. And, you know, whenever I see snakes and stuff like that, I always think of it as energy, like energy lines. But I say that's just me. You know, and most temples have got carvings as statues of great serpents, and they serve as protection. And even Buddha himself is often portrayed as sitting on the coils of the great cobra, with the snake's giant's hood protecting Buddha from the elements. That's the ones with the you know, the big cobra. And even on the floor in this cave, it's like snake scales. It's weird. It's like it can't just be what geologists are saying. It was to do with heat and water. You know, it's just no way. There's no way. I'm sorry, but I would put money on it. I really would. And I'm glad that Thailand aren't making it into a big tourist attraction as well. You know, that's good. The scientific explanation for it, according to the Pulanga National Park officials, is the giant snake rock is actually made up of some cracked rocks that were more than 100,000 years old. The sharp temperature difference between day and night caused the rock to expand, right, contract and eventually crack, matched with water erosion, the scale-like pattern of the giant snake rock was eventually formed. Now, listen, I'm not stupid. I know obviously that does happen, but you look at that. It's got all the, you can see like the colours almost, like I can see colouring in that, like, and the lines of an actual, like how a snake looks. It's just it's too much of a coincidence to me, like really, it really is. And it was only discovered in 2020, the whole thing. So there you go. So I want to see what else they've got. I want them to go a bit further now into this, because you don't know. But also I want to be careful, because you don't want to activate any of these things. Like, what if that just literally came to life? You know, it's just fascinating. It blows my mind, and I learn something new every single day. So I thought I'd share that with you all. So yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think it's natural, or do you think that the story is true, or it's got some truth to it? You know, let me know, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for the love on my last video as well. I am going to be getting a lot more out. There's loads. I've got loads of videos, and if you would like me to do something, if you've come across something, send it to me and I'll look into it and I'll do a video and I'll shout you out also. So thank you very much. Big love. Sending you lots of love. Take care. Love and light.